The Pacific Northwest is a place of almost mythical beauty. It's a region where the mountains seem to scrape the sky and the forests are so dense, so ancient, they feel like the world's last remaining cathedrals. People come here from all over the globe to escape, to get lost in nature, to breathe air that feels like it hasn't been touched in 1,000 years. The allure of the wilderness, especially in places like Washington's Olympic Peninsula, is a powerful, primal call. I'm making this video as a warning, because I answered that call. And I am telling you, with every fiber of my being, do not go camping in that wilderness. At least, not until you hear my story. You might think you know the risks. Hypothermia, getting lost, bears, mountain lions. We all hear the safety briefings. We all think we're prepared. But what I'm about to tell you isn't in any park ranger's pamphlet. It's not a risk you can prepare for. Because what's out there in those woods isn't just an animal. It's something else. Something ancient, something intelligent, and something that is still, to this day, hunting me in my nightmares. My name is Alex. I am the only survivor of a 3-person camping trip that went missing 2 years ago. This is what really happened. It was my partner, Ben, who had the idea. He was the experienced one, the one who craved true isolation. He was tired of campgrounds, of hearing another group's music from a mile away. He had found a spot on an old topographical map, a tiny, unnamed lake deep in the wilderness, miles from any marked trail. His plan was to hike in, set up camp, and be completely, utterly alone for 3 days. Our friend, Chloe, an experienced hiker herself, loved the idea. I was the novice, but their confidence was infectious. We drove for 6 hours, the paved roads of civilization dissolving into gravel, then into a barely there, overgrown logging track that scraped the bottom of our truck. The air grew colder, the trees thicker. When we finally parked, the silence was immediate and absolute. It was so total, it felt like a physical weight pressing on my eardrums. The hike in was brutal. We crossed streams, climbed over moss-slicked, fallen giants, and pushed through ferns so dense they soaked us to the skin. Ben was in his element, navigating with his map and compass. Chloe was right behind him, energized by the challenge. I was just trying to keep up, my lungs burning, my mind already feeling the crushing, claustrophobic power of the forest. The trees were so tall they blotted out the sun, casting the forest floor in a perpetual, green-hued twilight. After 5 hours, we emerged into a small clearing. And there it was, the lake. It was a perfect, dark green mirror, surrounded on all sides by a sheer wall of ancient cedars and firs. The spot was beautiful, but my first feeling wasn't awe. It was dread. The silence here was different. It wasn't just quiet, it was empty. There were no birds, no squirrels chattering, no frogs by the lake. It was a beautiful, sterile vacuum. "It's perfect," Ben said, his voice sounding unnaturally loud. Chloe, usually so talkative, just nodded. "It's quiet." We set up our tents, a small yellow one for Chloe, and a blue one for Ben and me. We built a fire ring, and as the sun began to dip, the oppressive weight of the forest seemed to intensify. The trees on the far side of the lake were cast in deep shadow, looking less like trees and more like a solid black wall. As Ben and Chloe cooked dinner, I walked to the edge of the water. I saw my reflection, and for a split second, I saw another one standing next to me. A tall, distorted shadow. I gasped and spun around. Nothing. Just our campsite, the fire crackling. I told myself it was fatigue. It was my first mistake. We ate dinner, the conversation forced. We were all trying to ignore the silence. Mark and Chloe went to bed. Ben and I stayed up by the fire. He put his arm around me. Amazing, right? Not another soul for 50 miles. I nodded, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. A cold, analytical stare coming from the darkness beyond the firelight. We finally crawled into our tent. I was exhausted, but I couldn't sleep. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of the wind, felt amplified. Ben fell asleep quickly. I lay there, my heart pounding, for what felt like hours. And then I heard it. It was a sound that started low, a guttural clicking. Click, click, click. HRRR. It was coming from the far side of the lake. I froze, my blood turning to ice. The sound was joined by another, a high-pitched, almost childlike whimper. Click. HRRR. My mind raced. A bear? A cougar? It didn't sound like any animal I had ever heard. I shook Ben awake. Ben, listen, I whispered. He sat up, his expression annoyed, until he heard it. His eyes went wide. The sound stopped, replaced by that crushing silence. And then, from the woods directly behind our tent, maybe 20 yards away, we heard a perfect imitation of a branch snapping. A heavy crack, followed by a thud, as if something enormous had taken a single, heavy step. Ben grabbed his bear spray and the hatchet. Chloe, he hissed, unzipping our tent just a crack. Chloe, wake up. We heard her tent unzip. I hear it, she whispered back, her voice trembling. What is that? And then, the three of us heard it at the same time. A voice. It was a perfect, digital quality recording of Ben. But it wasn't Ben. It was coming from the woods where the branch had snapped. It said, "It's perfect." I clapped my hand over my mouth to stop from screaming. Ben went rigid. It was his exact voice, the exact words he had said when we first arrived at the clearing, but it was hollow, empty of life. It was a recording. A mimicry. Ben, Chloe whispered, frantic. What is that? Is that a speaker? Is someone out there? Ben, to his credit, tried to take charge. Who's there? He yelled, his voice cracking. This is a private campsite. We're armed. The only reply was the click-click HRRR sound, now coming from the other side of the clearing. It was in two places at once. We spent the rest of the night huddled together in our tent, the hatchet in Ben's hand, as the sounds moved around our camp. The clicking, the whimpering, and, twice more, the perfect, hollow echo of Ben's voice, saying, "It's perfect." Dawn was a mercy. We crawled out of the tent, sleep-deprived and terrified. The sun hit the clearing, but it brought no warmth. We're leaving, Chloe said, her face pale. Now? We don't pack. We just grab our day packs and go. Ben was scanning the perimeter of the camp, his hatchet still in his hand. Look, he said, pointing to the soft mud near the lake's edge, right where I had been standing. There were footprints. They were humanoid, but wrong. They were too long, too narrow, and the toes seemed to splay out, almost like a bird's. But the most terrifying part was the stride. The prints were spaced almost 7 feet apart. I didn't see anything, I whispered. I was right here. It's a prank, Ben said, but his voice lacked conviction. It has to be. Some local yokels messing with us. What about the voice, Ben? Chloe was stuffing protein bars into her pockets, her hands shaking. How did they get your voice? That's when we heard the new sound. It was coming from the woods, from the direction of the trail we had hiked in on. It was the sound of a woman crying. A soft, desperate sobbing. That's... Chloe's eyes widened. That sounds like my sister. It's not, Chloe, Ben said, grabbing her arm. It's a trick, just like my voice. But it sounds just like her. Chloe cried, turning toward the sound. What if someone's hurt? What if they followed us in? It's a lure, Chloe, stop, Ben yelled. But the sobbing changed. It grew more frantic, and then it turned into a scream. A blood-curdling, terrified scream that sounded exactly like Chloe's sister. Chloe broke free from Ben's grasp and bolted toward the sound. Chloe, no. Ben screamed, running after her. Ben, wait. I yelled, grabbing my backpack and plunging into the woods after them. The forest was a disorienting maze. Chloe, Ben, I shouted. I heard Ben's voice up ahead, to my left. Alex, over here. I've got her. I pushed through the branches, relief flooding through me. I ran toward his voice. Ben. And then, from my right, from a completely different direction, I heard Ben's voice again. Alex, don't go that way. Help me. It's got me. I froze. I was standing in a small, dark patch of ferns, surrounded by two identical versions of my partner's voice, both screaming for my help. He's lying, Alex, screamed the voice on the left. This way. It's a trap, Alex. Help me. It's dragging me, screamed the voice on the right. A cacophony erupted. Chloe's sister screaming. My voice, I'm scared, Ben. The clicking, guttural HRRR sound, now seeming to come from the trees above me. The woods were alive with a symphony of our own terror. I didn't know which way to go. I was paralyzed by indecision. Then, the voice on the right, the one that had sounded so desperate, changed. It stopped screaming. It let out a long, slow sigh, and then it whispered, in that same, hollow, recorded tone, "It's perfect." I knew. That was the mimic, which meant the other voice. I ran toward the voice on the left, the one still screaming for me. I burst through a thicket of blackberry bushes and tumbled into a small, rocky ravine. At the bottom was Ben. He wasn't screaming. He was on his back, his eyes wide and vacant, staring up at the gray sky. His chest was open. It was a wound so violent, so precise, it didn't look like an animal attack. It looked surgical. I screamed. And as I looked up from his body, I saw Chloe. She was standing at the top of the ravine, absolutely still, her back to me. "Chloe," I sobbed. "It got Ben. We have to run." She didn't move. "Chloe, please." She turned around, slowly. Her face was gray, her expression completely blank. But her mouth was open, wider than it should have been. And from it came a sound I will never forget. It wasn't her voice. It was a chorus of voices. My voice, Ben's voice, her sister's voice, and dozens of others I didn't recognize, all layered on top of each other, a horrifying, multi-toned shriek. And then, from that same impossibly wide mouth, came the clicking, guttural HRRR sound. I didn't think. I just ran. I scrambled up the other side of the ravine and fled. I didn't follow a trail. I didn't have a compass. I just ran downhill, praying it would lead me to a river, to a road, to anything. Behind me, I could hear it. I could hear me. My own voice, screaming for help. "Don't leave me. Alex, wait. It hurts." I put my hands over my ears and ran, sobbing, telling myself it wasn't real. I ran until my lungs felt like they were on fire. Until my legs gave out. I fell and rolled down an embankment, landing hard on a gravel road. It was the logging track. I scrambled to my feet and ran down that road for hours. Every shadow seemed to hold the thing that were Chloe's face. Every gust of wind carried the sound of Ben's voice. I was found at dusk by a pair of loggers in a pickup truck. They said I was delirious, hypothermic, and covered in scratches. I told them what happened. I told them about the voices, the footprints, the thing that looked like Chloe. They didn't believe me, of course. They called the sheriff. A search and rescue operation was launched. For 2 weeks, they scoured those woods. They found nothing. No campsite. No tents. No gear. No bodies. Not even the footprints I had told them about. Ben and Chloe had vanished from the face of the earth. The official report says I suffered a psychotic break due to stress and exposure, that I likely got separated from my friends, and that they are still listed as missing, presumed victims of the wilderness. I was the subject of suspicion for a long time, but with no bodies and no evidence, there was no case. I moved to the desert. I can't stand the trees anymore. I can't stand the rain. I live in a place with no echoes. But I still hear them. In my dreams. Sometimes, when I'm half asleep, I'll hear Ben whisper my name. Or I'll hear that awful, clicking, guttural sound from my closet. I know what I saw. There is something in those woods. Something that has been there for a very, very long time. It's smart. It knows how to use our own voices, our own love for each other, as a weapon. It lures you, it separates you, and then it replaces you. So please, I am begging you, do not go camping in Washington's wilderness. Do not go off the trail. Do not trust the silence. And if you are ever in those deep, dark woods and you hear a voice you know, calling for your help, run. Run, and do not look back, because it is not your friend. It is the forest, and it is hungry.